All right. Kind of like my mellow music, so how's everybody doing out there? All right. Man, I know it's the obvious, it's winter, but boy, is it cold. Or staying cold, I guess. Could be colder, could be worse. Could have a foot of snow on the ground and be 10 or 15 below zero, but it's not. But this 28 to 38 range when you get snow and rain kind of just gets old after a while. So anyways, hey, welcome. You're in the zone here. It's Life's Journey at 50. I'm your host, Matt McCourt. I say Life's Journey at 50. I'm 53, so soon to be 54 here in, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. Can't even remember my birthday. That means I'm getting old. So again, you can always catch me on Podbean and Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon. So always thank you for stopping by and taking a listen. Hopefully it's well worth it. I try to cover travel, tech, life stuff. Hasn't been so much of the travel stuff since I started this whole thing, just because it's travel. Hopefully one day we'll get back to that. I just don't know. The world's just a funky place and it keeps on changing, doesn't it? I'm going to take this music on out of here. All right, there we go. So, one of the things I was thinking about, trying to come up with subjects to talk about, because I get tired of the politics thing. Sometimes you can beat that to death. And it just gets old, and I think most of you know where I'm at anyways on some of that stuff. I could talk about all this other stuff that's been going on, but try to get away from some of that and just talk about some other things. I usually try to do that, which is always good. But, today I wanted to talk about, because I had a great conversation with a friend the other day, and it really had to do with, we're getting older, right? So at least, I am. And depending on who's listening in the audience or whatever, if you're around this age group, you're dealing with older parents that are in their, whether they're early to mid 70s, maybe 80s, maybe a little bit older, who knows? Obviously, all this COVID stuff's been crazy, and you're obviously scared to death around that with them. And I would tell you that if your parents are still around, there's a lot to think about. I had to deal with this because probably most people don't know, but I was raised by my grandparents. So I had a little bit different experience because obviously they were much older. And unfortunately, I lost my parents 10 and 12 years ago. God, it's been that long. Jeez. Every time I think about it, it's been around that 10, 12 year period. And it's hard. Anybody that's lost a parent, knows the struggles that you have with that. And I think some of the other things that come into play is the more of the struggles too around. What I would tell you is the planning process around that. I mean, laws have changed. Heck, you're getting ready to, there's some laws, I think, from the Biden administration, at least, what they're proposing, that could really significantly hurt, wills and, things that are left to you, whether it's property or money and investments, those type of things. And I was thinking about this, and again, I was talking to a friend, and they were talking about how they were going to go visit their mom. Their dad had passed away. Her husband had passed away about 6 months to a year ago, and I asked, about, hey, do you have power of attorney? And not only just for the financials, but health power of attorney, and is there a living will, and all those things. And so I thought that would probably be a good one to start off with, is that I would tell you that to check that stuff out, because my parents didn't. I didn't know any better. This would be probably 15 years ago when I got involved with it. So I'm in my mid-30s. Wow, mid-30s. And I'm in my mid-30s, got my first child, second one, thinking about the second one, and just a lot going on, right, in your own personal life, right? You got young kids, and we were moving around all over the place, and living in New Orleans and then Dallas, and I moved from Dallas back to Cleveland because of my parents trying to help take care of them, because they started having some really health issues then, and so again, all that stuff, and I never realized kind of all the ramifications on that. But my mom had severe Alzheimer's, and my dad ended up just the dementia stuff, and then ended up, kind of going into Parkinson's, or, and again, they're my grandparents, but I call them my mom and dad. They raised me pretty much from birth, and legally actually adopted me at 5. Not to get into sad sob story, poor Matt stuff. No, I had, thank God for them. They were a godsend, and really just gave me a life that, otherwise I wouldn't have had, or at least put me in a good spot to do something with my life. My dad came back from Vietnam, had nothing to do. I actually had never met my dad. And my real mom, who's still alive, is more like a distant sister to me. I guess I'm kind of just opening up here in general. And so you're really getting to know me, which could be scary. But yeah, so, at the end of the day, my grandparents raised me. And whole other stuff goes on with that, but neither here nor there. But so I've always considered them my mom and dad. So when I reference to them, my mom and dad, that's who I'm talking about. And so I learned the hard way. Didn't really understand the power of attorney stuff. Didn't understand that, they had already lost kind of a little bit of their mental faculties and stuff like that. So even with their will and stuff like that, I, for the lack of better terms or whatever, and whether or not you think it's greedy or not greedy, but, I lost out. Like, there's 100 acres of land that was supposed to be given to me. Didn't happen. Ended up having to sell it off, because part of this process was, since it was too late in their mental awareness and stuff, the courts deemed that they were not, mentally capable. So anyway, so you had to liquidate their assets and everything to help take care of them. And it really stunk, because it didn't, that I feel bad, because I would have loved to have had that property, kept it in the family. That property had been in our family to my great grandfather. That would have been, something for me and my family and my children, and my son and daughter could have, inherited that from me. And it was just very frustrating, to say the least, right? Because those are things that, at the end of the day, you wish things would have been a little bit different, right? So I tell people all the time, get together with an attorney, have the conversation with your folks. And your folks probably, depending on how they are, that generation, more so than anything, very independent, very set in their ways. Most people get that way as they get older anyways, because you're set in your ways and very, try to be independent. But I think even more so nowadays, us growing up, we're probably a little bit more open to talking to lawyers and about a living will and a trust, and, and all these things that go on, and power of attorneys and setting things up. And I just think that we've become more aware of this. 15 years ago, I wasn't. I was naive to it. And it caused a lot of just a lot of angst and a lot of heartache and burn, because I always felt frustrated, because my parents, worked all their lives and stuff, and basically I had to liquidate everything to help take care of them, which we would have taken care of them anyways. But I know my dad's wishes was for that property to be handed down through the generations. And, granted, I had to sell it. I sold it actually to a cousin. One of these first right of refusals has to come through me if they ever go to sell it. And that's okay. It stayed semi in the family, but that's not what the intent and purpose of it was. And, but so I always tell everybody, if you've got stuff like that going on, to get involved, get a good, a family attorney that can help get through the process. If you have parents that are, like struggle with it or whatever, have a consultative session, and get them to get involved, because I think it's really important, that you figure that out. And if you have a large family, like if you have a lot of siblings, like, again, I'm an only child, and so if you have other siblings and stuff like that, you all really need to sit down and have some conversation around that. Like and again, the reason why I brought this up is because I was talking to the person, and her brother, they've already had this conversation. So they've kind of worked stuff out already. I know in some, over about a year or two ago, talking to some other folks, how families can get really torn apart by this. Like, they think that, this person should get the house or that person should get the house and they should split this. And it gets, it can get heated amongst family members. And at the end of the day, you want what's best for your parents. At least I would hope that that's what you want. And you settle up everything that your parents have to be settled up with. If there's anything left over, then you have the conversation about how you divide up assets or how you sell things off and how you want to handle those. And also do it while your parents are still of some sound mind and body to be able to help make those decisions. There might be certain things that the mom and dad, the parents want to gift to certain kids, maybe certain things that they want to be divvied up a certain way. You try to get their wishes and make sure that everybody's comfortable with the process. And because it can get ugly, like, last thing you want to do is have to go to probate court, and then you have to go to court. Like, for me, it was a little bit late in the process. I had moved back from Dallas. It was already too late. They'd already gone in some nursing homes. Another cousin family member was helping out at the time, and by the time we got things switched over into the courts and stuff like that, it really became cumbersome. And I will tell you right now, you've got to track all the money. I mean, you almost have to be like a forensic accountant. So I would tell you that, you've got to go through that process, keeping tabs on everything. And it's a drag. Think about doing all that for your folks, trying to take care of them, and yet you still have a job, you still have family, you've got your own kids to take care of, your own stuff to take care of. I mean, it takes on a whole nother life. And if your spouse is not necessarily in tune with it or wanting to help out, luckily enough, mine was, and Cindy does a great job. For those that do listen and know who we are, my ex Cindy, she does, she helped out as best as possible, and always kind of gave some guidance and stuff like that. But even now, we as parents, and again, I think I've told you that we have a special needs daughter. We've had to do a living will and a living trust and all this other stuff and get things set up for our daughter. And we have contingency plans, like she's remarried, and she her husband's involved with it, kind of this process that we have with the trust and everything, which is a good thing because you just never know what can happen. Obviously her brother Matthew, our son, he's got some, responsibilities in there as well as he gets older. Again, we don't want to tax him. He's younger. But those are the things like I start thinking about now. So even if you're in your 50s, start thinking about that stuff, like a living will trust, and where does your insurance go, like your life insurance, and how does that give you divvied up amongst everybody, and setting things up so it goes to the trust versus going to the person, and there's just a lot that goes on. And my ex is involved dramatically, starting up like parents groups and things of that nature, and has really started to help out in that arena. And that's one of the reasons why I talk about this. But, you start talking about, like, so if you have a special needs child or special needs family member, what about housing down the road? Stable accounts. These are accounts that you can, donate money or transfer money into that doesn't get taxed or doesn't hurt them on their Social Security and other things like that. There's like centers for independent living, and, different counties have different, transition coordinators and supervisors and employment, and then you got to get, again, attorneys. This is where you come into trust and wills and guardianship and estate planning, and there's just a lot. Social Security consultants, community agencies, financial advisors, and we've gone through a lot of that stuff over probably the last 3 years. We've sat down and really mapped some stuff out, sitting down with financial advisors, getting the right life insurance and how that covers everything, and making sure that we're set up with, we've got the couple of attorneys that we work with, working out the trust and estate planning and all that. And then, again, and I really credit Cindy a lot on this, because especially for our daughter, because again, she's been able to kind of dive into it. Who she works for is big advocacy. I won't get, necessarily say who she works for, but she works in that arena and is very tightly, dialed in with that, and does a great job. But again, for anybody that's out there, whether you're talking about your parents now and trying to set up things there, or you're talking about even for your like atypical kids, it just doesn't have to be special needs. I talk about it just because it impacts us probably greater, because the long term of being able to take care of our daughter with a very narrow family scope, her having one brother, and then Cindy and myself and her husband, it makes it a tight knit piece, and so we have to have things built in for our daughter. But for you out there, just doing it in general for your kids, for your family, doing it for your parents, I would tell you that is a huge burden on the families. Again, the tax laws change. You need to protect yourself on that. Everybody's worked hard for what they have. So whether your house or any of your assets, you would hate for them to just come in and start taxing them even heavier, or penalizing your children, or penalizing your spouse because we didn't have things set up. So I would tell you that it's a big deal. And if you can do it, I would get involved and start looking at that process now. Because the last thing you want to do is be in a situation where your parent is non-responsive, they didn't have anything lined up, didn't have their affairs set up, and then next thing you know, you might be in a situation like I was, where you start having to liquidate their assets to pay for their health care. And things could have been set up differently to help them and all this other stuff, but yet, so again, this comes from my personal experience. It has led us to have to, to do the things that we're doing now for our kids. But I would tell you that, you have to work with one another to be able to do this. And again, that's making sure that your siblings or your spouse or your parents or your in-laws, outlaws, whatever you want to say, you need to have those conversations, because you don't want to have them when it's too late. You want to make sure that you take care of you and your family as the best, and put yourself in the best situation you possibly can. And so, I was thinking about that. Like, I've been thinking about topics to talk about. It's first of the year. And I thought it would be very important to think about as you go into this year, am I set up for that? We all think we're healthy and fine and dandy, but, anything can happen, right? I mean, we can all step, the proverbial step out the front door and get hit by a car, and, and something happens, and we're not ready for that. Anything can happen. And I would just tell you that, those are the things that, I know for a fact, when I talk to Cindy, I mean, those are the things that keep her up at night. And she's always thinking about, what's happening with the kids, and she gets a lot of anxiety and stress around it. And I'm sure she'll hate me for saying that. But and it does me too. I guess I try to play it off as much as I can, because it makes me a little bit nervous that, if something was to happen to us, I mean, Ava could, be a little bit on her own. And although we have a great network of friends, we don't have a lot of family. And, blood is always thicker than water, as they would say. But I think we have enough support network and close enough people that would help guide that process. And but again, we've also set it up to where we have contingency plans built in for estate planning and trust and wills and all that other stuff and guardianships. So so anyways, it was a conversation I had earlier in the week with a friend from work, and then brought up some of the things that, we've been working on in our own personal lives, some of the personal experiences I went through. And I've told a lot of my friends, I've told a lot of close, friends and people that I know that, take care of that stuff and get it off your plate, because the last thing you want to do is have to deal with it at that time. And, there's a lot of stress that goes on to begin with, trying to take care of family members when their health is bad and everything. The last thing you want to have to worry about is going through the courts and forums and deadlines and court appearances, and especially during this time of COVID and everything like that. I mean, what's the chance you get in front of the judge and then someone else possibly might be making the decisions on financial or health for your loved ones? And you don't want to be in that situation. You want to be in a situation where you can make those decisions as appropriate, as needed, as timely as you possibly can. So anyways, I thought that would be a good subject, good thing to think about. It's the first of the year. It's not a downer subject. I think it's a good subject to have that conversation with your family members, and set yourselves up for success. So again, I thought I would bring that up. I thought it would be a good topic because, family's important. We need to take care of one another. You need to take care of your family. And that's just a great way to do that. So, again, I'm your host, Matt McCourt. I really appreciate you stopping by. This is Life's Journey at 50. Take care of your loved ones out there. Hopefully you can share this. Maybe, have this, share it with someone that, either doesn't believe in it or, thinks that, they don't need to do that. Put it down the road. Trust me. Tell them to listen to this, and then maybe it'll help them change their mind. So, again, you can catch me on Podbean, Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon. And I really appreciate the support out there. And make sure you guys are hitting, that like or, favorites or whatever. I really appreciate it. And just want to share some tidbits. So, anyways, stay warm out there. It's January, another month or two of this, and we'll be heading into the spring and some decent weather, and hopefully COVID starts decreasing so we can enjoy one another again in a social environment. So, all right, everybody, have yourself a wonderful one. Yeah, have yourself a wonderful day, weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye now.